Howdy. Okay, function report number 20. And this is concerning the question of bending. I see people being very, there's no one real propensity that people do, but a lot of times what they do is inaccurate. So let's get into it. If you don't have bending checked off as being affected, I would definitely suggest you take another look and you give it another consideration and actually try bending. Remember, it's a very open-ended question, and it says, is your ability to do these things affected by your impairments? If you, the by and large understanding people seem to have is that if they can still do it, and maybe they do it once a day, maybe once a week, maybe twice a day, one of these particular tasks, they think that it's the proper response is not checking it. However, that it couldn't be further from the truth. The question concerns if bending is affected. So now remember, we're in an 8-hour workday. If bending is not affected, then technically you could do a job that you are bending over, maybe weeding a garden all day long, picking crops. So if that's not something you can do, and by the way, it doesn't mean you can't do it because of the impairment that took you out of work. It could be for old age reasons. You've got degenerative problems in your back. It doesn't have to be the same thing that took you out of your most recent, career or employment. So I suggest, and I would suggest this unless check with your doctor. If he says don't do it at all, that's a whole nother story. But if you think bending, if you were about to put, leave that unchecked as being affected, I suggest you see if you can touch the floor. Can you bend to the floor? You probably could have when you were very young. So that is impaired. And again, it could just be that you have stiff back arthritis, degenerative stuff as we get older, or something from an injury. It doesn't matter if it is impaired. And if it is impaired, let's say you can bend, but you bend slowly and you certainly can't touch the floor. Like bending down, you're talking about bending to the couch to pick up the pillow to move it over there. Take note of that. Because, and when you describe that it is affected, now that you've learned it is perhaps, explain, you could say, I can bend slightly on rare occasion. If you don't think you can do that multiple times an hour, or by the end of an 8-hour day, doing it multiple times an hour is going to cause you significant problems. And by the problems, it could be pain, it could be stiffness. It could be where you're going to tip over if you bend. So you might have balance issues with bending. It could be that you are actually aggravating your back pain, of course. Another thing that can affect the ability to bend is what it might do if you have a cervical problem. If you have a neck impairment, sometimes the ones that cause headaches or migraines, or if it causes, radiculopathy symptoms down the arms, bending over, strangely enough, can actually affect that and then downward. So be careful to check what your body's feeling when you do it. And again, if you can do 60 floor bends in an hour every minute, God bless, maybe you don't have any kind of limitations to bending, but I've never, ever met a person with a back problem who doesn't have issues with bending. So if your case happens to have a back problem in it, even if it's not your big bad problem, maybe it's migraines that are your big bad problem, definitely check this, like I would suggest doing with all of the listed tasks on there. They are all critically important for work-related tasks in all occupations, some in another to various extents. Not being impaired with bending is going to be a very suggestive of a very minimal back problem. For instance, if you had a back problem, if you have hip problems, bending could be a problem, so you need to find out. Don't assume you can do it just because maybe in reality you hardly ever do it. Maybe that's because it is a problem. And you just didn't think of it that way. So you need to actually check these things out. Do not guess. Do not guess and give a wrong answer that is damaging to your case, because you're going to regret it. Okay. Bending. Now there's another task called stooping, and I see that they kind of keep their hands off this. And stooping, I believe, it's not really bending over and down, but it's kind of like leaning forward at the hips. There is a ruling from quite a while ago that suggests that if a person cannot stoop at all, like zero, then there would be no jobs they can do, because every job requires at least some minimal level of stooping. Okay. I see that ruling is wildly ignored at all times, because there are a lot of people who the medical record will suggest in some way, shape, or form that they can't really stoop because they can't do that kind of pressure on their spine or on their hips. And it seems like adjudicators don't want to acknowledge that that is supposed to be, according to a rule, indicative of no work that could be done full time. So it won't necessarily be a winner because they are ignoring that. But and stooping, if you notice, is not on that list on number 20. So, but if you do have a problem with stooping, I mean, if you have a very genteel back, something has definitely gone wrong. This could be post-surgical, could be failed fusion, a variety of things. But if you do have that, I would mention stooping, even though they don't ask about it. Just say, I can't stoop. It, whatever happens, if it's horrendous pain, some people can't stand back up. I mean, same is true with bending too. And even with sitting, sometimes some of these impairments rise to the level of, it's almost like they can't get back up, whether it's weakness in a certain, area of that body, or stiffness that's in, it can vary, I think, but I would mention stooping if you have issues with stooping, and try to differentiate the difference between bending and stooping, and overtly bring out the stooping if that's an issue. Okay. Which reminds me, I think I'm going to start putting it in our proprietary little document where we gather this information at the beginning of a case for later use for things like this. Because even though it's not in there, I think it could be relevant. But bending, give it a go before you decide to guess at your answer. And if you can't bend multiple times an hour, and do it hour after hour after hour for an 8-hour workday, and then do it again the next day and the next day. If you can't do that, then there is some sort of limitation. And I promise you, it's probably not going to be a limitation that will take you out of all jobs. It's not going to win your case. But remember, we're dealing with a big bowl of all those 12,000 plus occupations. And some impairments are going to carve out some impairments are going to carve out another. And bending or stooping is going to carve out some of those. Okay. It also tends to go hand in hand with some other limitations that if one can bend, but one says they can't do something else, it might look a little peculiar, and again, particularly when it comes to the back or the hips. So keep in mind if you have those particular problems, but even if you don't, and you think you're copacetic, give it a test go. Try to do 60 floor bends at the waist of the floor in an hour. Can you do it? It's like 1 a minute. Not that bad, right? How about 2 a minute for 30 minutes? Anyway, you get my point. Check it out. Don't guess. All right. I said that about all of them. And bending is no different. All right. Have a good one. Bye.